Okay, guys, this episode is going to be a little bit different. As you can probably hear and see, the sound quality we had some issues with. This was part of our interview series that I conducted at my house. And the guest today is Tim McGoff from Celtic Bank. He's the Chief Business Development Officer there. And you're going to see that we have mics in front of our faces, but that is only for show because the audio that was picked up was actually from the cameras, which is why the quality is so poor. But I really apologize to Tim for that, and to everyone. I am going to encourage everyone to switch over to our YouTube channel so that they can watch it. You can hear it. I just watched it back. I can hear pretty much everything, but we're going to add subtitles just to make sure. So I'm not going to release it if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or anything like that. So switch over to YouTube to hear me and Tim talk about Celtic software plays, how technology is impacting SBA lending, the fact that Tim's leading a team of BDOs and has never been a BDO, and how that works out, and also how to keep BDOs happy. Very important. This is literally one of the best episodes we've done from a content standpoint. What Tim, as the leader of one of the top 4 shops in the country from 7A, he's just giving gold nugget after gold nugget. He's really at the forefront of 7A production. And he's got his sights on the #1 spot. So this content's amazing. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so all right, let's start from the beginning. How did you get into SBA?
I was very gung-ho back in the late 90s on leaving Tiffany & Company, which was kind of my first gig out of school.
The jewelry store.
Yeah, I was in their corporate division, so I was selling, at the time, this is back in the early 90s, where companies were still giving recognition awards to employees for 5 years and 10 years. It was a big program that we sold to the HR departments. They would say, we have 6,000 employees and we've got a budget for $3 million to do this program, what you would do. And that's what I sold that from Tiffany's to the different groups. This is a long time ago. So I did that for about 5 years, and then I wanted to get into high tech. They moved me out to San Diego. That's how I kind of became a West Coast person back in the early 90s. And then I realized, I wasn't going to really get too far with this, so I wanted to get into high tech. And this is, I wanted to get into software. I was just always interested in kind of high tech stuff, and nobody would hire me right off the bat, coming from Tiffany's, trying to pitch software. So the only logical step that I can make was, at the time, was getting into cell phones. It's back in the bricks, and then they had the flip phones. So this is going back ways away. So I did that for about 2 years just to kind of get into somewhat of a technology play, and then I was able to leverage that and finally get into software, and I did that for about 10 years.
Really? So you were in software for 10 years before you got into SBA?
Yeah.
So what happened there? You switched over to SBA?
The dot-com bust happened, and even though I was working for a software company, it just it crippled a lot of the economy at that time. I found myself out of work for a little bit longer than I would expect it for me to be out of work, just given everything that I'd gone through. So I literally was out of work for several months, and I called a buddy of mine that I was still back east, and I said, listen, I'm out of job. You got anything over where you're at? And he happened to be at the time Business Loan Express, and he was national sales manager there. BLX. And he said, well, we just fired our VP of Internet Sales. He says, quite frankly, I have no idea what he does, but I'm sure you can figure it out. And that was it. That's how I got into the business.
So you got in, and this was, 20 years ago?
This was in 2003. That's right, 20 years ago.
And it was the VP of Internet Sales? That's what it said on your business card?
That was the title. That was the job description. It was basically, and again, you got to remember, this is like websites were just coming out. Everybody was just turning over from brick and mortar to we got to figure out e-commerce, and they had a foresight to say, let's figure out how do we use the internet to do SBA loans. And I had quite a bit of experience with the internet and websites and marketing and that kind of stuff. And so I just went there and just took what I knew and applied it to doing SBA loans.
Well, that's interesting, and I feel like it's coming full circle now because everyone's trying to figure out how to use software in SBA.
That's right.
And you've got that foundation.
That's right. It's different for different organizations. I think, the smaller, nimble type shops, are able to kind of, if they're motivated and committed to it, they can get some things done quicker than the larger banks could, right? So it was a great opportunity to be in that small shop and get some things. I mean, I literally had no developers. I had nothing. I said, I need one hire. Just give me one hire. I got this amazing developer that he and I just kind of brainstormed. We went out and got a URL, SBAloans.com. We thought that was great. And we just built it up. I think I could say this, and people may say I'm wrong here if they happen to see it, but it ultimately became what is BoFly now. If you've heard of BoFly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Online marketplace.
I think that whole thing wound up, what I built for BLX, the underlying technology and the concept, the brokers coming in and being able to see their deals, being able to come and do some marketing of their own, being able to track it, interact with your BDO, all of that stuff we did 20 years ago.
So you truly were at the forefront of that whole movement.
We had a lot of things going for us. We had rapid development capabilities. We didn't have to go through all of the rigmarole you would normally do at a big bank where you've got sign off from this group and sign off from this group and legal that. And, so it was pretty quick to get some things done. And it was fun. It was good. And we ultimately try to obviously capture business from the SBAloans.com and start marketing up the BLX, and we get loans. So it was a great experience.
How are you using today at Celtic Bank, technology software? Is that being used in your SBA production?
It sure is. I mean, things have changed, things have developed. You've got, some common names out there. Everyone knows Encino, right? Built off of Salesforce. And we're not using Encino, but we are using Salesforce and decided in-house that we were going to kind of build our own Encino, for lack of better terms. So we've kind of custom created our own platform.
When was that?
We were building it for, I would say, 2 or 3 years, to be honest with you, but we finally launched it about 6-7 months ago.
Really?
Yeah.
How's that been working out?
It's so far, obviously with anything new, there's growing pains and there's some learning curves, but
always.
But if you ask me, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not utilizing it the same way everyone else is, but for its first deployment, I think it's fantastic in a couple of reasons. That we now have salespeople, underwriters and closers, our brokers, and our borrowers all contributing to the same system. We're not going here and here. There's literally one area where everyone gets to see everything.
That's awesome.
So that in itself is fantastic. Now we still need to fine tune a couple of things, but the outside portal is still being kind of worked on a little bit for better user experience for our borrowers. And I think the next thing also is just kind of there's a lot of communication in loans, right? Between all of the parties involved, and really coming out with a good strategy between what information goes where, so everyone knows exactly where to go to find that information. Whether it's, we talk a lot on internal chats, we've got emails coming through, you've got phone calls that come through, and you don't want all of that everywhere. It's too much information, but
right.
How can we figure out what information needs to go where, so we always know where to
look
for it?
I feel like everyone in the industry is figuring this out right now.
Yeah.
And technology always seems so simple when you're before you start implementing it. It's and most of the people are using already created platforms, right? You're going more customized. Is both the front end user face, portal, and the back end loan operating system all custom for you guys, or did you buy one of these?
Yes and no. I think the bottom, the underlying architecture of Salesforce with regards to how their objects work with leads, opportunities, contacts, all that kind of stuff is pretty standard. But we did create, kind of the biggest thing is this checklist that drives, our checklists are driven by the structure of the deal we put in.
Right. So Bizak, you're going to have these items.
Correct. And then that translates to what the borrower sees online about here's what I need to get you.
That makes sense.
And then the other big aspect of customization was really the files, right? How do we get those files to sit in their appropriate spots so that if an underwriter needs to go see it or anyone needs to go see it, they can quickly find it, that it quickly understands that it's there, that there's ability for a review of that document before it's checked in and it says this is right, the signature's right, it doesn't need to be replaced. So all of that stuff was custom, and quite frankly, it took a lot of work.
And I feel like it's never right when somebody sends in a document, but I think that's what we need to figure out. How do you get it to where they send in the right document?
You know, it's a messy process, SBA loans, right? There's just a ton of information. Borrowers are busy running their business and, you know, and trying to get them, and it's not only just one person. Sometimes you've got multiple affiliates, different people. So it's a lot to expect, I think, from your client, that you're asking them to kind of play ball so that you can process the loan quicker on your end. So it's a challenge, not only from a technology perspective, but also just to put something together that's usable and that people are actually going to want to use. So I think there'll always be, a need for personnel to help foster the use of it. Whether it's your BDA saying, here's the link here, just go here, do this, or even selling a concept of how it's going to benefit borrowers so that they can understand and they can go back, well, why aren't we closing that? Well, just here's why. Here's your list. It's right there in front of you. You can see it anytime you want. So there's still some learning curves going on in this messy business. It's not like applying for a credit card, right? You do a one pager and you run your credit score and you're done.
Yeah,
It's a whole different ballgame.
The technology stuff is long overdue, and I feel like it's always like, oh yeah, that just plugs into that, and it's like, oh, okay, and then you roll it out, and you're like, there's some bugs you got to work out, and then you got to get everyone like to change their behavior. That's the hard part,
right?
And the brokers, different stakeholders in the transaction now, instead of sending you the Dropbox, again, I'm sure everyone can still send Dropboxes, but there's this portal we want to use, and you got to change. If you've been doing business 20 years, you got to change how you're going to do business.
Well, that's true too, right? You have, let's face it, we have some young talent, up and coming talent in the SBA world, but the majority of the heavy hitters have been around for a while, right? You had our number one video the other day, right?
Jim ain't learning this new technology.
Right, so he's forced to, but we have that, but it's not really going to be, they're not really motivated. But you have this platform that we're building now, and as the next crew and the next generation comes in there, that's all they've known, right? They've had internet phones and they've had this, their whole life is online. So I think the adoption will gradually hit like very easy.
It has to, honestly. Like if you're listening, like just do it, because the borrowers are now asking for it. They got their mortgage on Quicken or whatever.
Right, exactly.
This is how it's done now. We are behind the curve on this. We got to get it going. We got to get it done right. And it's the other thing is like, it's not going to replace you. Like it's not, the technology that will not replace people in our business. It's just there to help fix the problems, which is always like, oh, I sent you that. Well, let's open up the portal and see if you really did send us that. Like you can see it now. So it's like gonna fix those types of problems where, oh, I don't have to send this 12 times, or where are we in the process, right? You should be able to see it like you're, like you just ordered a package and it's shipped to your house. You know exactly where it is.
Correct.
That's exciting. Getting a bunch of bankers to change all this and figure out technology and software has been very interesting. So I want to get back to BLX, because you were hired there as a sales manager.
Yeah, I would say it started out more as a strategy position, and then once we kind of had the platform built, which took about a year, then that's when we started bringing. I had some we call them internal PDOs that were literally pulling in leads off the internet as opposed to going out and dealing with brokers. So I had that small little kind of internal channel, we called it.
You skipped the part where you were a BDO.
Right. Well, I think I mentioned to you the other day, it's, many people know in 20 years and being at Business Law Express, US Bank, here at Celtic, that I was never an SBA BDO. I did at BLX take cradle to grave 4 loans, 3 7A and 1 504, just so I could get through it. Had a lot of help getting through it, but that was it.
That's really interesting, because I think just about every sales manager in our industry was a BDL for years before they became a sales manager.
That's right.
And it's always that thing where it's like, if you were a good BDL, what are the chances you're going to be a good sales manager? Because it's like almost opposite skills, I feel like.
There's the deal fostering and deal babysitting aspect of sales management, right, which is important. But then there's the other aspect of it, which is blocking and tackling through your organization and making sure your systems is there and making sure that your voice is heard at a higher level, as decisions are being made. So, there's different aspects of it. And I think, let's put it this way. Even though I wasn't selling loans, I came from 20 other years of selling many other things, software for 12-month selling cycles for millions of dollars, to shrink wrap software, pitching magazine subscriptions back in college to fill up my gas tank, to always selling. So just not.
Yeah, well, selling's one of those skills that's you're using it every day, whether you know it or not.
Right.
Where were you between BLX and Celtic?
U.S. Bank. So after, we all know BLX and what happened there. So I had moved from San Diego.
Not everyone
to New
knows what
York.
happened.
Well, let's just say they got hit with a perfect storm. The three-part storm.
This is 08?
08, where we all know what happened there, and the secondary market's drying up.
Yeah.
We had a rogue employee do some bad things, unbeknownst to our leadership, which definitely hurt us. And then, the third part really was a byproduct of the first one, which was the secondary market dried up and our liquidity was gone. So,
Makes sense.
so that, created an opportunity, which was 2 years later than it was supposed to be. I convinced my wife that we'd go back. We just got married. We were going back to New York for this position, and then it would be 3 years and we'd go back to San Diego. Wound up being 5.5. So we got back to San Diego, and as you can imagine, all these BLX people, again, we were number 3 in the country at the time, I believe, behind CIT, and I forget who the other one was. But so we had a lot of talented people. We had a very, as I call it, an entrepreneurial culture of credit. We were really good at the single use properties, which really helped us get to the rankings that we got to. But we had a lot of good talented people kind of disperse and try to find homes. But at that time, when nobody was hiring, if I don't know where you were at that point, but there was literally really hard to come by jobs at the time. So I was very fortunate to get brought in the U.S. Bank and wound up kind of in the same role that I was at BLX. And it was a great, I call it a safe haven, even though, nobody was really lending at that point, especially U.S. Bank. They were pretty, it was pretty conservative. I think you had Jared Johnson on here a few weeks ago or a month or so ago.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
And so that's where I met him. And I'm sure, I think if I remember right, listening to your podcast, you might have mentioned the same kind of thing. It was around that time.
Yes.
And they really clamped up, even more than they normally would on a good day. So it was tough then, but it was a good safe haven. And, for me, I think that U.S. Bank really gave me a good experience with regards to what it's like a big bank, right? And how the difference between big bank and small bank works, especially with you, not just in general, but also from an SBA perspective.
Yeah, because that is a big bank, which I don't see branches here in Florida. They're mostly west side of the country.
I'm still banking with them for some reason. I don't know why, but they're a good bank. I mean, they were a very well-run bank, but from an SBA perspective, I didn't know this at the time, but it took me about 2 or 3 years being there. I was there about 7.5 or so, but that their SBA group was, this big of the whole pie, right?
Right.
Whereas, at BLX, it was 100%, pretty much, close to 100% of the pie. And it's just a different mindset when you're, this big.
Exactly.
You're
trying to grow it.
It was more of a PR play
really?
than it was a revenue generator for the bank. Well, sure, it's the only apples to apples comparison you have in the industry to say where you rank in your ability to service small business.
Right.
right?
So they were top 10 for several
So
years.
everything was about the rankings, right? It was, we want to be able to say in Cincinnati, every branch in Cincinnati, that we're number one in small business.
Interesting.
And the only way you can do that is through the SBA, because again, it's the only apples to apples comparison there is across banks. So it was a PR play more than anything. How are we doing in the rankings? And we had more rankings reports than we did production reports.
That's crazy. When you go to somewhere like Celtic, which, how big were they when you got there?
That's, we were doing, I think, about 150 to 200 million.
Okay. And so do you go in there and inherit BDOs that are now working for you?
Yeah, there was a prior national sales manager that was there, and I think there was maybe 14 or 15 BDOs at the time, maybe somewhere in that range. I remember the owner of the bank, my boss, took these 4 top folks and said, I can't have everyone running the meeting on stuff, so you guys are going to be team leads. And so he had that kind of set up before I got there, where there was this team lead, producing team lead concept. And that's what I kind of came into, was 3 or 4 team leads, and each one of them had about 3 or 4 BDOs.
Do you think they like that you've never been, other than the 4 loans, you're not out there telling them like how they should be doing it?
I think a lot of them will always, in the back of their minds, think, he doesn't know. He doesn't get what I do every day. But I think hopefully they recognize that we're in this business long enough to understand. I know it's like to sell things. And I think I have to just, over a short period of time, show them what I can do for them. Block and tackle, like I said, be a voice for them. Make sure that they are successful. They know I'm on their side. The better they do, the better I do. So
you have a lot of big producers at Celtic, and a lot of them have been there a while too.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep BDOs happy? Or is that even the right question? Because I just feel like we said BDOs are jumping every 2-3 years. So is it that you're able to keep them happy?
I don't know that it's me as much as it is the bank. I think the bank and the culture at the bank, from the top down, is fantastic. I mean, it's just, I know my guys are getting called, and my BDOs getting called. They're like everyone else, who are producers all the time, and I just don't worry about it. I mean, first off, the grass is never greener, like a lot of people think. But our place is just, I don't know how to describe it. It's just nobody wants to leave it. We've got a great credit culture. Nothing sells another deal like the one you just got done, and we get a lot of deals done.
Getting your deals done is the key for a BDO, obviously.
It is, and it's like anything else. There's sloppy deals, they're messy deals. None of them are ever easy, right? But at the same time, we're, it's 200 million or so. We said 130 million last year, number 3 in the country. That speaks volumes for our bank and our culture. I think the culture is really what it is. I say entrepreneurial culture. One of the things I do when I'm trying to recruit somebody is I have them sit around a credit union on Thursdays.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a bold move.
It is a bold move, because I think I can talk all day long on this podcast to them on an interview, but when they see it in person, when they see how we look at the deals and the questions they're being asked, and our common sense approach of getting a deal done, that's the only way that it sinks in.
What's their feedback after they call you after that?
Amazing. They love it.
They're like, I've never seen anything like that, because they're from the Bay.
I think the comment I hear the most is, wow, that's the way I always hoped it was everything done.
I've been in some pretty rough communities back in the day, I think. If you heard some of the things that were said in some of these committees I've been in.
We have some fun sometimes. We have some fun with them, but it's common sense.
Okay, well, when we say big producers, Jim just won BDO of the year for 9 figures worth of 7A volume, which is more than most shops. And of course, he has a team, and it's a whole collaborative approach. Jim will be the first one to tell you that. I've known him for 2 weeks. But why are the BDOs able to achieve so much success over there? Because I feel like for a while, for at least a few years, I thought like 8 to 12 was like what people were looking for production. But 8 to 12 was like a month for Jim.
Yeah, maybe at 3/4 of a month.
So is it just the ability to get deals done?
I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. I think, again, the culture, I talked about that already, but I think looking at the BDOs, they're extremely motivated. They know their deals inside and out. I think that's one of the keys to success in Celtic is that they've got to know the deals.
Were they doing these big numbers before COVID?
They were, but not nearly as much. I think COVID definitely gave us a spark. Like I think I mentioned to you, the PPP thing came around and everybody was all hands on deck across the industry. And I really didn't want the BDOs to get bogged down in that. They didn't like me or the bank for saying, we want to kind of keep you away from the PPP.
Why? Why were they upset about that?
Well, the number one reason was their clients were calling them anyway, and they didn't have any answers. But quite frankly, none of us did at the time. It was scramble mode, but they were really on the front lines getting hit by sticks. Their clients were just,
okay. They wanted to help.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. But in hindsight, I think it was the smart move because everybody else didn't have the bandwidth or was completely didn't have any idea what to do. And we said, we're going to continue to do 7A loans. And we were making approvals and approving loans, and word got out, and we wound up getting a lot more business than we ever did. Almost double, quite frankly, of the originations coming in on a monthly basis. And it has never stopped since then. So I think that, a BDO that was doing $10, $15 million was now all of a sudden doing 30.
Wow.
And
because they stayed in the market.
Because we were in the market, we were there making loans, we were saying yes to loans. We still had to look through the COVID lens like everyone else did, but we were making loans. So that helped, I think, get us, higher. I think it takes a while. Like anyone who goes to a new shop, it takes them a while to figure out how to go. What's behind door number 1 and what's behind door number 2? How do we get to door number 3 to get this deal out the door? So we had a few new people come in. It took them a little while to get going, and they started doing that as well. So I think the combination of things really kind of helped ramp it up.
Yeah, I know. I remember we shut it down for 30 days, just like total shutdown, and then we came back in, and we felt we were coming back in at a relatively early stage. Because other lenders were shut down for 3 months, 6 months. Some people cut half their teams, during all this. But you kept it going, and then you gained market share as a result, and that's been able to sustain that.
Yeah. It hurt for a while. Celtic was known for our execution and speed. Well, we're all broker business or referral business or repeat clients. We don't have any branches, so it's all about your ability to win that deal and then be able to get more deals. So our 7-day turnaround time for or 5-day turnaround time for approval took a hit. Our closing took the biggest hit probably. We had double the amount of volume, but we had the same staff. So, you just can't.
Deals bottleneck. Right.
So there was a little bit of extra massaging that needed to happen to kind of get through that. But after, it took 12 to 18 months really for us to ramp up our group, get comfortable with that amount of volume. And now we're back on growth mode. I stopped bringing BDOs. I couldn't throw more, call it, fuel on the fire.
Growth went great. You said 700 million plus in 7A production, number 4 in the country. Where is there to go?
You know the answer to that. You always want to be number 1, right? It's a tall hill to climb. We know who the behemoth is these days, but I think we'll get there. That's I think where we need to get a little more creative. I think going in the future. And I think with this technology platform we've got, once that kind of gets really baked into our paradigm, that's going to help us take the next step, I think.
If you're hiring more BDOs, because you have BDOs with 30 million 6 million. One guy did over 100 million. Most BDOs are in that 15 and under space. Would you hire someone who was under 15 million?
Yeah, we would. Nothing excites me more than to have like a new person starting out in this business, getting an opportunity and growing quickly into a 20, 30 million. So we're taking some, I don't want to say flyers, but we're taking some growth opportunities for some young folks that I think really have what it takes. Back at US Bank, where CEO used to tell us we're all accidental bankers. Nobody says they want to be a banker when they, maybe investment banker back in the day in the 90s and 80s, but nobody said they want to be a banker. But I had an interview with this young guy. I call him a kid, but that's not fair. And he tells me I went to school to become a 7A BDO. I said, what? I'm not kidding. This was maybe two or 3 months ago. And lo and behold, I said, well, I got it, right? I said, and he was super sharp and everything else. His uncle was in the business, and that's really that's why he had the compass for becoming a BDO. Right? So I had a new team lead that we implemented who has got a little bit more bandwidth than my prior team leads. There's a threshold of the producing BDO where you get diminishing returns in terms of overseeing people versus your own production. So this new team lead I have is kind of a little bit more up to the task and fostering some development of these BDOs. So we're doing that a little bit now.
Very cool. Let me ask you this. If you have big BDO, I know you're not worried because you guys have the culture. People do stay here a while, they rarely leave. But if someone does leave, or in one person's case retire, like how do you mitigate that risk of losing 100 million overnight?
Fortunately, again, I'm back on growth mode. Even though the growth mode and we're forecasting this year is based on potential loan demand decreasing, right, with the interest rates going up and being flat, I'm in a growth mode and saying I'm high right now. So you hope that it doesn't take you 10 or 8 people to compensate for that loss. But, I don't think it'll be a complete loss either. I think, somebody, in that one particular instance, got hopes that they'll still kind of stick around and contribute, even though maybe not as a BDO. So that's a hope of ours. But I think it's like anything else. You like to cater to your number one and your number two, your top performers, and give them everything they need, but you also have to recognize that you can't throw your eggs in the basket. So you just, it's best you can do is kind of first time.
Can you bring up your producers to the next level? Like, how do you get a $20 million guy to a 35 or down quickly?
From my perspective, it's just make sure that they have everything they need to be successful, but it's really on them. It really is. I mean, they've got to do it themselves, and when they do, they're compensated well for it. So the only thing I can do is look for those people who are motivated. It's not the easiest thing to spot, but sometimes you can spot it. And just how you communicate with the phone or in person. Sometimes you just, maybe you can tell their prior income before they come on board, and they want to maintain that and improve that. So, but it really is a big deal.
I would think if you wanted to protect against having a shop where it's concentrated on one BDO, you could hire 10 BDOs that all do 20 million, for example, which I know maybe doesn't exist. Like, even if you wanted to do that, you could do that. But if you were able to do that, what would then the downside of having a bunch of $10, $20 million producers be? That's like, let's say 15 of them versus 5 mega producers.
I don't know that I look at it that way. I mean, first off, you've got this business is lumpy. Somebody who might do 25 one year might do 12 because they have several deals.
If my production could go down.
You can. And it likely will at some point.
Oh, no. I didn't know that could happen.
I know, right? You've just been like this for you every year, I'm assuming.
Yeah, every year.
Okay, just wait.
Oh boy. You're gonna have to return the Corvette.
No, we won't do that. But so I think, again, I think it's going to be up and down for everybody at some point. And it's really about their own motivation getting back up, get there, dealing with the adversities that happen here and there, and just being generally motivated. We have an incentive trip that we do every year. That's kind of one piece that gets folks to a certain level, maybe not as high as some people would like it to be, but and it's because of that, I think, again, it really falls down to each individual's personal motivation.
Yeah, right. You can't teach that fire fidelity. That's the one thing. The video that are successful have, they just have that internal desire to succeed and be good, chase the people in front of them, try to get out in front. That's the trick. And then just but also be mindful of that, keeping yourself in check when you're dealing internally. You can't let it all go to your head. You can't be a bulldog in a china shop, or a bull in a china shop, or a bulldog.
Right.
So it's like that fine balance where you can just be really balanced, basically, as you go, right?
Exactly.
Tim, thank you so much for joining us for the class.
Thanks for having me.
Over to my house.
Really appreciate it. No, it's a great drive over here, and I'm glad we were able to do it.
All right, that's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode of The Art of SBA Lending. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, email me at ray@artofsba.com. Until next time, ta-ta.